Hi everyone. I'm going to go over our class project this week. We're studying Paul Klee. What you can't see is that off this screen I'm looking at two of his works. I have Dream City and I have Castle in the Sun to look at. Those are going to be my inspiration for the piece I'm going to do. And I'm going to tell you why, and then I'm going to show you how I complete it. I love the colors in Dream City. This is a watercolor, and it said he did some watercolor, some oil on this piece. I didn't get the measurements. Who wants to do the math for me? It's 46 centimeters by 31 centimeters, and I didn't convert that to inches. But these are some of my favorite colors, this aqua blue, green, blue. And so I want to try to do my piece in these color tones and shades. Okay, and then looking at Paul Klee's Castle in the Sun, you can see, can you see how it looks a little bit like a castle? Where the triangles are, maybe like the turrets of the castle there. And obviously we have that big sun up at the top. I'm going to use a ruler and a pencil to draw similar geometric shapes on my paper, and then I'll use watercolor to paint them in. So I'd like you to do the same thing. I'll show you in a minute how I'm going to use this ruler to draw some lines pretty easily. I want to just draw them in with pencil. Remember, the pencil marks will show when you do watercolor, so I'm going to just try to do kind of light pencil marks. If you want to do something a little bit more graphic, you could use a fine line Sharpie or a ballpoint pen, but you're going to want to test it ahead of time to make sure that the watercolor doesn't make those lines bleed. With a pencil you won't have any trouble. And then for the watercolor, I have a lot of watercolor at my house. Remember, we used tube watercolor in class once, and I have a lot of pans and tubes, but for this project, I'm just gonna use this watercolor. I feel like maybe you guys have this kind of Crayola watercolors at home or something similar. So that's what I'm gonna use for mine, because I wanna use the same things that you guys have access to. And if you have tube watercolor or pan set that you like, by all means you can use that. If you don't have watercolor, you could also use color pencils. I think color pencils would work fine. Watercolor will be a little bit more authentic because Klee used a lot of watercolor, and many of the pictures of his work that you saw were done in watercolors. And that reminds me, if you haven't taken the time to watch the slideshow and the biographies, the other links that I posted for you, please do those before you work on your project so that you can learn about him, see the works that he's done, just like we did in our class. We looked at that first. Okay, so looking at the Castle in the Sun, you can see that there's a lot of vertical and horizontal lines, and then all of those turn into rectangles, triangles, and squares, basically, that he paints in. Let me see how this is coming out. So, in order to do something like that, I'm going to take my ruler. The first thing I'm going to do is make one of those frames around my page, and that's going to make my piece slightly smaller, which will make it more manageable. And it just gives a nice clean look when we're done with our piece. So going about 1 inch in, I'm basically just using the width of the ruler on the outside of my paper. So I put it there, and then I drew my lines. So now I have a frame within to work. And in this frame, I'm gonna just draw these vertical lines like this. I'm not going to worry about them being evenly spaced apart, because in a minute I'm going to cross some of them again. And I know that up here there's going to be a section that I'm going to leave cut out. So I want to think about that as I'm going. You know what I'm going to do, and I think this will be easier for you too. I'm just going to go ahead and draw all of the lines in, and then I'm going to erase the parts that I don't want up at the top. Like where I know I'm going to draw in the sun. You can see that my lines aren't evenly spaced. One thing I want you to remember is I'm not trying to do Paul Klee's piece exactly. I'm just using inspiration to do my own piece from it. So now let's do some horizontal lines and start to make some squares and some rectangles in our work. I'm gonna leave those really tall. Do a few more over here, maybe. So you get the idea. And why don't I go ahead and put a few triangles in. There's a lot of triangles that I think are making up his castle. So let me see, would I rather use the side of this ruler? Or would I rather just draw them? I think I'll just freehand where I want some. And I'll put some, maybe, let's put some down here. I see some spots where he has some really small squares, so I'm gonna make a few more sections of smaller squares, maybe in here. So you put several shapes, geometric shapes, in your on your page 2. I see a spot down in the bottom where he has even more small triangles, and then almost like I don't know, he has a special shaped something down here. So I'm going to try that too and see how I like it when I'm painting. Something a little bit different down here. But I'm not trying to copy his, just looking at what he's done, so that I have a lot of interesting pieces too. In the top left, he has lots and lots of thin rectangles. So I'd like to make a few more of those. Let's try that. Okay, and I want to take out an area up here that will be all of my sky. So I'm going to erase these lines. So if you decide to use a Sharpie or a pen on this part, you'll want to map out a little place ahead of time where you don't do lines, because otherwise you'll be stuck with the Sharpie lines or pencil lines in there. I'm gonna go over one more right here. Okay, he has a almost perfect circle for his sun. It's called Castle and Sun. Maybe you'll want yours to be Castle and Moon, but at any rate, find something circular that you could trace around. This I feel like is too small. Something you could trace around to make a nice circle. Maybe I'll try this. Unless you want to freehand it. Okay, so you have your circle there. Okay, this is what I have so far. And now I'm going to get busy coloring in with watercolor, and I'm gonna not use all those bright, mostly primary colors and many reds that are in Castle and Sun. I'm gonna go over to Dream City and use that palette as my inspiration, and I won't have the same colors that he uses, but basically I'm gonna use a lot of blues, greens, and aquas to color this in fast forward, but you'll get the idea. If you have pan watercolors, if you have these, I just took a little squirt bottle and I sprayed over some of the colors I was going to use, because when you moisten them ahead, it starts to make them easier to work with. And I think I'll start in the top left corner and work my way across, just to try to avoid a lot of getting my arm or my hand in my colors. Okay, I skipped ahead a little bit. I'm gonna go a little closer maybe. Had to get my glasses so I could see. And I'm enjoying painting this in and seeing all the colors, how they bleed together. I kind of like it because it makes new colors, you know, or new tones and shades of colors that I already have. So I just have a few more squares to finish up here. I'm going to do those. And then maybe go back and try to neat in a little bit of the corners. Make a few things a little bit crisper. Even though when you look at Klee's work, it's not perfect if you look at it up close. There's a lot of bleeds and colors blending together, and it's pretty. It's really pretty, so that's what I'm trying to do. Maybe not washing out my brush, or not rinsing it out sometimes, just letting it go from, you know, aqua blue, then getting it in some green. So those are two colors that are a little bit blended together. If you're having a hard time with your paper bumping up, don't add so much water to your brush. And when you do rinse your brush, dab it off on a paper towel a little bit and use a smaller size. Before I was using a larger brush and it was holding a little bit more water, and I didn't want my page to get too wavy. I think over time this will flatten out just fine. And if you're having a lot of buckling, maybe just stop painting, let everything dry. When you go back in, try not to use quite as much water or dab your brush more so that you're doing more a dry on dry page technique. Just a few more spots, and I'm trying to think of what color I'm going to want my sky and my sun. Now, if I look at the castle and the sun, it's like a red sky with an orange sun. If I look at Dream City, where I'm kind of being inspired from, there's a moon shape. It's kind of like this sand colored moon shape. And I'm just not sure what do you think I should do? I'm almost thinking about leaving my sun, or maybe it's going to be my moon, leaving that uncolored, and you know, so it's nice bright and white, it'll really stick out, and then painting the sky around it, maybe a really, really dark blue. Let's try that. I have a dark purple in my palette. I'll mix it with my other dark blue and I'll see what color that comes out to be. I think it'll still be in the somewhat same color scheme, but I don't mind if my sky is a little bit different than everything else. And you can choose your own color for your sky and sun or moon, or even half moon if you want to do like a half moon or quarter moon. You can decide, it's your piece. over some of my lines and get in my corners. If you look close while I was painting, I missed a little bit, and there's still some white spots that I want to put color in. So when I'm going to do that, and then when I finish, I'll show you a finished picture of mine. And you see where I got some blue on my moon? I'm most likely going to correct that. Well, let's see first if I can correct it on this paper by putting a little bit more water right there and then dabbing that up with a paper towel. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It works pretty good on this paper. And then if I just keep dabbing so it doesn't come back. Just because I want my big white full moon to be nice and white. And I knew that little spot was going to bother me. And I kind of like the purple around the moon. I think I've decided that mine's a moon. Let's see if I like it if I dab in here a little bit with my towel, paper towel. What do you think? Okay, guys, I hope you have fun with this project. Use whatever color scheme you like, and I can't wait to see how they can come out at the end.